essential categories in the smart malls. Couple of sessions ago, we have discussed on the panel here that what are the smart malls, what are the malls of future looking like, right? So the categories which are essential, right? We have gone through the pandemic, and the definition of essential have changed in the last 2 years. So Mukt, I would like to, know that is there a need to rethink, or we need to, re-strategize the zoning, the category mix of the mall?
Good evening. I think from the way it has been happening over the years since the malls and the organized retail came into being, it is actually a truth that year on year or generation after generation, as and when the customer expectation changes, there are newer formats, there are newer categories that emerge. And therefore, there would be a constant need to upgrade, to change, and to be current with times, and to be contemporary. So it is, in my opinion, truly a fact that categories which were relevant at a particular point in time and possibly doing extremely well may no longer hold that degree of relevance today, being replaced by newer categories which have a higher draw or a higher requirement from the customer's point of view.
So taking the cues, what you have said, there are a lot of categories where the space allocations, the area, the carpet area of the store have changed. And people have realized this in, whatever time frame, that what are the optimum store sizes for themselves. Ravinder, I'm coming back to you on this. Have you noticed this in your centers that the brands have come back to you with possible maximization or minimization of the space?
So yes, there were few categories who have increased their size in last 24 months of operations with us. And the large contribution was done by athleisure and activewear categories, wherein, to give you an example, Skechers expanded their store by 200%. Puma went to 300% plus. Van Heusen did the same. Alan Solly did 300%. So there were few categories who have increased in their size, but on the contrary, there were few categories who have dropped also. So Miniso went from X percentage to 50% of what we have signed them initially. There were few areas wherein the larger hypermarkets which went up to a time wherein we've started offering them 35,000, 40,000 square feet of built-up area to them. I think with the Insta deliveries coming in and with more things coming in due to COVID, Amazon coming into your grocery delivery, I think we need to rethink into modern supermarket concepts again. And we might have to relook into offering a smaller size to them, because we still feel that hypermarkets are a very, very prime category holder to us, but giving them the right size, depending on the catchment, can be reconsidered.
So, taking the question from there only, earlier we used to lease about, some time back, about 100,000 square feet to hypermarkets. Then we reduced to 50,000 square feet. Some malls today are doing 20,000 square feet, 25,000 square feet. Rohit, I want to ask you, what is the ideal size of an hypermarket in the metro cities your malls are operating?
So, Diwanshu, to answer you, I think, yes, what you're trying to say is it's been journey, right? This has been a journey for the hypermarket players, right? Where they've started with a 1 lakh square feet. Now, I think out of the top 5 players, the top 3 players are good with 15,000 square feet as well, right? So I think they have also learned it the hard way. And similarly for us, the mall owners, the actual productivity on per square feet, the efficiency plays a big role, right? So I think that also gives us the opportunity to do further more anchors and further utilize the space in a better and efficient manner. Yeah.
So continuing to what Rohit had said, we still have hypermarkets who are taking more than 1 lakh square feet. Lulu Hypermarket, which is now exploring properties apart from what Lulu malls also. So they are still looking at 150,000 square feet, 2 lakh square feet of total hypermarkets, because their offering is such that they have everything under one roof called as Lulu Hypermarkets. But on a generic tone, like the top 3 of the pyramid in the hypermarket zone, uh, depending on metro, non-metros, and offering in that zone versus a virgin market, between 25,000 to 35,000, every hypermarket should fit into their right spot.
Thank you, Ravinder. Manojji, after the pandemic, have we seen that there is a need of new categories which has emerged in the malls?
Well, I would say that it's not really new categories, but it's probably a better weightage. So, for example, malls who were not having essentials, which is like your hypermarket or a supermarket, now have tried to actively seek certain players who can fit into that space. So to that extent, for those malls, it is new. Secondly, we had sports and fitness, much like the Nikes and Adidas type of goods. So they have now evolved a little more into an athleisure segment. And as Tarun was mentioning, I think they have also gone into a little bit of a slightly larger space. And possibly for malls, a little better depth is required for athleisure categories, as well as for things like electronics and cosmetics. And maybe a little tilt towards value goods as well.
Ashish, coming to you from your previous avatar, was there any categories which as a developer we were not focusing about before pandemic, and now we are desperately seeking those categories or new brands in those categories?
See, pandemic has taught us in a many ways, right? So categories like you've already mentioned, athleisure, electronics, healthcare, household, home decor, is something which has come up really well post-pandemic. And, as Ravinder already given an example of brands like Skechers, Nike, they've already increased the size. So churning is very important. Churning in terms of resizing is very important. Categories, we have to introduce new categories like co-working, healthcare services. All these categories can essentially, add up to the new. See, ultimately, for me, I think all the categories are important. It is just that weightage should be given to the categories which are performing very well right now.
So, that was one of the discussion we had, that alternative asset classes, which is co-working, healthcare centers, you have those labs where you can go give your sample, medicine stores, laundries, pharmacies, all those kind of things, these alternative asset classes. Do you see a synergy between alternative asset class and retail centers?
Okay, see, as Elan Group, we are developing neighborhood centers. For us, categories, national or regional categories, for us, neighborhood, the brands who can fulfill the functional need of the customer, of the consumer, can be a handful for us. Something like laundry services, tailoring, all these categories can also coexist with the categories which are lifestyle, food, and entertainment oriented.
Rohit, do you see co-working becoming a major tenant for malls going forward?
So, Diwanshu, I definitely feel so, but to take you a step back on adding more categories into a mall, so there are two aspects to it, which is you are within the mall or you developing a mixed-use development and you complement the mall, right? So we have to look at it at a two-level perspective. So coming back to what you want inside the mall, definitely, a neighborhood will definitely have a laundry, a pharmacy, and so on and so forth. But when you talk about getting those kind of categories in the mall, you need those kind of branded players in the country, which to my mind is still lacking in our country. But few categories which definitely I foresee going added in the mall is bank branches. If you look at globally, there are high-end branches in the mall. Car showrooms. Tesla has showrooms in all the best malls abroad. And second, I also see EV, electronic vehicles, two-wheelers and four-wheelers coming in. I think those are the categories which will be a disruptor within the mall. Now coming back to your question of co-working and other things, I definitely foresee this as a complement. And I think we are also trying to do something along with co-working, maybe in our food courts, so on and so forth. And to add up, we're building an office block on top of our existing mall of around 4.5 lakh square feet. So you'll have 5,000 employees forever, like a walk-in, a for sure walk-in in the mall, right?
Captive audience.
Captive walk-in, yeah.
Mukt, you have done similar kind of a concept in GK2 Delhi, right? Where you have a retail center, you have a cinema on top of it, and you have done a big co-working, it's a first in the kind of a co-working player in that center. How's the response, and do you see that synergy fitting in?
Yeah, see, so listening to what Rohit was saying and what earlier Ravinder was saying, the category mix is actually determined by the asset itself. So let's not confine ourselves to a mall. Let's talk about the asset. And we're talking about maximizing an asset. So whether, what's the reality of the asset, what's the size, what is the, GLA, and therefore you will, develop a retail strategy or a category mix strategy. GK2 is an asset where we have a cinema player, and it is also a very central location. It is in fact a landmark, and that is where a co-working opportunity, an international brand in co-working came over to us. And I think I was having a discussion with their leadership. They have an order book of 98% plus post-pandemic, okay, for the next 2 years. If that be so, then it is possibly a situation like a pandemic, which has actually given a fillip to them, because a lot of people decided to shed off a lot of, office spaces or, rented accommodations.
Flexible workspaces.
So started creating a flexible working space. Similarly, there is one other factor that comes to my mind is the policy, role of policy in a category development or de-escalation. The new liquor policy, how viable would, a vend store be in a premium mall? Is another thing which is a question mark. So how the categories lose relevance. So I talk about relevance more than anything else, whether a category being good or no. It's a function of these 2 or 3 things at a particular stage. In a destination mall, you would not want to have, the laundries and those aspects. But in a neighborhood mall, most definitely you would want that. You would perhaps even want an international or a good private sector bank coming up there, because it'll, create to the ambience. The third thing that comes to my mind, sorry, I'm taking on a little longer on this, delving in the topic, is that we are no longer talking about, like I said, a mall. We're talking about assets, and more around the world, we are talking about mixed-use assets, like Rohit said, building an office block. So there's going to be a scenario where there's going to be office blocks, there's going to be residences, premium residences around the place, there's going to be a neighborhood, shopping center, and possibly a district center of sorts, which is a contained neighborhood. And if that be so, then the relevance of the categories will undertake a complete change, because you will need the food and beverage options for the guys to drop down from the office, go to their third place, okay, before heading home, which is possibly walking distance, or the tube is walking distance from there. And in the process, if they're doing a, working hours of say about 8, 9, 10, they probably need a 24/7 grocer or a fitness club. So it's the consumer pattern which will determine the category.
So you are saying this can coexist in a social meeting place with a neighborhood development need catering kind of a thing, right?
Absolutely. Malls are no longer malls. We were talking about this in the first session today. They're emerging as social destinations.
Coming to you, Shriram, have we seen that the concept of zoning and the tenant mix is changing in the malls?
Post-pandemic?
Of course, post-pandemic.
In my opinion, I think it's definitely, people are, all the developers are rather improvising on the existing zoning, which they kind of looked upon while launching a product. we hardly have seen any project which has been leased or in process of opening as of now, at least in the north. But whatever opened was kind of being either leased or fitted out, and just opened post the corona waves and the restrictions got over. So immediately, if you see, there could not be any drastic measures which somebody would like to take until and unless he would probably see what was the situation like, how was the bounce back of traffic which was already coming in. Obviously, it took time to get back, but obviously the categories which, like Ravinder said, the athleisure category, the sports category, with people who would use those products or merchandise wherein they don't need to get out of their comfort zones as they were earlier. So those categories have seen some upswing. However, putting in those categories as relevance, which were not being so kind of put together in terms of before they were the mall was actually being planned. People are emphasizing, developers are emphasizing to add a large sports store, add the athleisure with the right size, which was earlier about 1,500 square feet, now going up to 3,000 to 6,000 square feet. So these categories are definitely looking upon. F&B is seen a really big upswing after the restrictions got over. You see a lot of action in that space. Certain parts of the countries have lifted their lifted timings, eased out fire norms to bring in more F&B and elongate the process of a stay of a person or a family or somebody is going out for a meal, which was earlier restricted to say 11 or 12 o'clock. So now, like Delhi is now at 3 a.m. They've just recently, all the roofs of major buildings where the compliances can be followed are used. Now they are coming back as F&B zones, which is giving a real push to the nightlife, a real push to the centers as well, where they've been occupying. So you'll see a lot of change, which is now coming in. Maybe now the projects which are in pipeline, where developers are looking at improvising their designs, looking at more options which probably bring more traffic, let the traffic stay for a longer time, which is also being looked upon very deeply, because these are all profit centers and nobody wants to lose on any kind of activity which a guest would like to do visiting the center.
Ravinder, about a decade back, when we used to do the benchmarking of the malls, we used to take Westfield London, Dubai Mall, Siam Paragon, Bangkok, and we used to see category mix very different in those malls as compared to that of India, right? As far as I remember, Westfield London was about 28% F&B that time, right? And about 14% entertainment. So altogether, put together, about 43% spaces, which when we compared it to Indian malls that time, it was about 12%, both the categories put together. Are you seeing any change happening in India in that segment?
Certainly, yes. So Vegas has two components to it. So I'll be really specific here with my specific mall. So Vegas has two zones of shopping. One is introvert, which is conventional mall, and one is extrovert, wherein we have zoned that mall into salon, F&B, your jewelry, and electronic. So all my CDIT, right from Chroma to your Dell, Asus, HP, Lenovo, Apple Service Center, they're all in my extrovert zone. And to our surprise, especially after the first wave of COVID, and the kind of growth that we have seen in CDIT, be it the reasons attributable, like work from home got started. So everybody was on screens, the screen time got increased, everybody was upgrading their homes, changing their televisions to their washing machines, to their dishwashers, and so on and so forth. So electronic as a category and CDIT specifically in that zone has seen a very good spike. And I would not be wrong if I say that in pandemic, the highest number of stores, if somebody has opened, is Chroma. They've been opening a store almost every third day, and in every parts of India. So you look at tier 3, they are opening. You look at metros, they are opening. And they have taken that by leaps and bounds, and that are not only been seen in growth in numbers, but the growth in consumption also. So from where we started off 18, 24 months back, and today where we are 300% at growth to what we started at in 2019, Jan 2020, and where we are today. So we are 300% to what we started from. And that is only specific to Chroma and CDITs.
So Mukt, coming to you, you have relaunched the mall in a new avatar with about 35% of F&B, starting from ground floor to all the way up to the top floor of the mall. How was the experience and how is the response, first of all? What was your experience dealing with the nuisances of, making it F&B compliant, providing services, all those things, the journey and the risk of, taking that component too high?
I should have anticipated this question earlier. Okay, so we call the food and beverage district as the commons, and so there are two things that have happened here. One is that the mall has gone through a certain degree of transformation. There is also a mix change, and the weightage has changed. I think arguably DLF Avenue is a first mall where the weightage to food and beverage has risen to 30%. The idea, therefore, continues to be in the ethos that malls are now the social destinations. Enabling food and beverage, I mean, you take one big block, and we did something very clever. We took one block and we made it as a food and beverage zone, giving it a distinct personality in terms of colors, looks, hues, lighting, music, all aspects. And we realized that food and beverage, is a category which is it is behaving as if it's an essential. So even during the pandemic, the food and beverage players will tell you their resurgence was the fastest, recovery was the fastest, and even during pandemic, the amount of ordering that was happening or takeaways that were happening was not funny. So it seems to have been a very good move to have done something like this. In terms of asset management and reorienting the asset, to do this, then enablement is an essential factor that comes with it. And I think, DLF has an opportunity, in terms of inherent design and technically sound teams to be able to have delivered that to us.
Noted. Thank you, Muk. Rohit, which are the categories which are bouncing back, or let me put it this way, which are the categories which are seeing maximum growth in percentage when we compare financial year 19-20 revenue to financial year 21-22 revenue? And just to give you a cue, sorry, Ravinder was mentioning electronic sale in his center is better than all anchors put together. The component of electronic sales in the mall, monthly sales, is higher percentage than that of all the anchors put together.
No, definitely I agree. So after COVID, what we really saw, few categories which was just off the block. And forget recovery, they were growing. Electronics was definitely one of them, right? For the first 2 quarters, electronics and athleisure was shining, right? But slowly, steadily, when you look back now, every category has started picking up, right? And everybody is recording growth, right? From athleisure to fashion, people said the formal wear will not come back. It's also coming back strong. F&B had a on-off, off-on kind of situation with various restrictions in terms of seating, timings. Bombay had a different rule for lunchtime, and dinner time there was different rule. They thought the virus comes out in the night, right? So yeah, those were various controversies which were going on. But now if you look back at a mall level, I think it'll be correct to say a couple of categories which are not yet come back, maybe services, spa and salons, and a gifting category, right? Because they are more impulse. And also I'd like to touch base on cinema, all right? March saw there, I'm sure we had stalwarts of cinema here, fortunately sharing the same stage. They had the lifetime best numbers in March, right? A cinema which used to do a 2.5 crore, one of the centers, has clocked in 4.5 crores, right? Courtesy the content, courtesy the 3 blockbusters which came in. So Last month, to give you a perspective at the mall level, our centers have recorded growth of around 43%, one of the centers. Baroda is at 28% growth, and so on and so forth, right? So it's come back very, very strongly.
Mr. Monga, coming back to you, what is the importance of aspirational brands nowadays in the brand mix? It has become a craze to put all those big names on the ground floor of the mall. So I just wanted to take your feedback. Is it necessary to have those brands? Is it consumer-led demand or is it someone else-led demand?
See, according to me, if you see, if you go a little back in time, when you look at any mall which was being leased out 5 years back, or maybe not 5, maybe 10 years back, there was a certain set of brands which always be on the ground floor. You'll find your denims, you'll find your Lacoste and your Tommys, and you would be probably look at these as the most this category as the highest order in the vanilla store category, and you'll put it there. But once you see, and I'm talking about a metro center, but when you see the same thing which was in a non-metro center, you might not find those brands not even present around or in that district or in that area, or maybe it is near to the closest metro city. When you see them, there is a certain set of people who are subscribing to those brands, and then suddenly, as they grow in their life cycle and what they are doing, their aspirations increase because they are looking up to somebody else. And once you're looking at somebody else, you want to kind of wear that, reach to that person, or what is his style or fashion or what you're looking at. So they are creating a demand for looking up to another brand, which possibly they might graduate from the current denim which they were wearing. So I would not like to take names of brands, but from a price point perspective, if you are looking at a 4,000 rupees denim, you probably aspire to look at a 7,000 rupees denim, and you'll start working towards that. So while you're in that cycle, the center which you are subscribing to or you going again and again, that center would also need to upgrade to the customer who has been coming to that particular mall for the last 5 years. So it is a cycle which needs to be attained depending upon how the traffic flow and the customer behavior is happening in that particular center.
So you're saying it is demographic-led?
Yes. So that is the most scientific way of looking at it. If you just say that, okay, I like this, tomorrow I would like that, that would completely depend upon a compulsive decision or an unconscious decision which I'm trying to take. But once you're looking at a more scientific way of understanding, as the center grows older and the numbers don't decline in terms of footfalls, it keeps showing growth. So the center also requires to upgrade the tenant, the brands, the mix which they have probably started with. So that customer who was spending 5,000 rupees, now he's ready to spend 15,000 rupees. So it is more important so that customer doesn't go to a new center which probably would cater to that demand. So probably you need to understand the life cycle of the customer.
Thank you. Manoj, we are discussing mall management in India from a long time, right? You want to add something, Mukh? Sorry.
No, just holding the mic.
Okay. We are discussing mall management in India for a long time, right? But there is another side to it, which is a very famous word in the retail fraternity outside India, which we call RAM, right? Retail asset management. Do you see as Indian operators, mall operators, are following RAM, or we are just doing mall management? First question. Yeah. And second question to that is, how in the best way you can explain RAM in Indian context?
Okay, see, what happens is that if we see retail asset class management, it is probably the larger pie in comparison to mall management. Mall management can consider as more like a facility or operation management. Here you're trying to evolve your asset across operations, the leasing revenue models, the footfall part, the valuation part, and also maintaining the building for long term. So it is rather, long focused, and it is trying to, establish the center more concretely, both in terms of cost structures, revenues, and its future sustainability. While in pure operation management is just day-to-day stuff, take out today's work, live through today's cost and don't worry about the future. So I think that is a key distinction. Secondly, in this, what is happening is that pandemic and otherwise, couple of things which have also emerged is that it is like, a focused recategorization amongst the various categories in terms of space. From the retail side, it is a focused, resizing of stores. And the third thing is that everyone has realized yet once again, like the 2008 time, that whatever steps are being taken to expand, whether it's a retail store or a mall, your business model, financial model has to be sustainable, and it has to be thought out right. The moment you try to be bullish or bearish, you will lose out on both ends. So that's the third dimension to this. But coming back to the original question, I think retail asset management is probably the way of the future, because you need to have sustainable assets which continue to go prosper and also have the right value and create the right value in that catchment neighborhood or region.
So Ravinder, coming to you on this, we were having a discussion in the morning and you explained very well that, all three things, which is brands, developer and the customer, has to be thought together when you are, planning or running and operating a mall. How this retail asset management thing you are applying inside your mall?
You rightly pointed out a very, very critical point that we see as a challenge in our day-to-day operations. So asset management has to do with a lot of facets to it. One is making the center energy efficient, wherein we use alternate usage of solar energy, we reuse our water to the point that it is minimalistic wastage achieved. And there are a lot of natural greens which are being created so that keeps the mall temperature a little lower than the usual. Greeneries are added to the larger areas. The buildings are designed keeping the sun path in mind so that the minimum heat retention happens, and majority of the time the heat is not being absorbed. So in the peak hours of say 2 to 6 or 2 to 4, when the heat is being absorbed in the center, those side of the centers needs to be planned a little more effectively. And coming back to the larger phase wherein you touched upon the two other critical components which are, which we say, so if the mall behaves in a 360 degree, so 180 or more than that belongs to retailer and customer angle. So customer really doesn't contribute to a larger asset building class, but indirectly when the guest or the customer feels being belonging to that same zone, so the mall has to remain relevant to them in the larger horizon. So if the mall loses the identity of being relevant to them, today the millennials are very, very quick to adapt and leave you. So if you are not being relevant to them, today you could be their favorite, but tomorrow you will don't hold any space in their choice of shopping centers. So moving from there, asset building is a continuous process wherein a lot of energies needs to be embarked, and right from your CAM, making it energy efficient center, adapting to a lot of new things, will make a lot of changes in maintaining the property relevant and the asset being called as an asset, and the developer also remains happy with the asset's performance and valuation.
So Mukt, coming back to you, the basic concept of RAM is the maximization or optimization of the valuation of the asset, right? The asset which you are handling. Being an asset manager yourself, running a prime center in South Delhi, what are the steps you are taking inside the center to maximize or optimize the valuation of the asset?
See, I think it has been extolled, what Manoj said, what Ravinder said, is that it is no longer just a management of an asset. It is about maximizing, from the asset, both in terms of its health and longevity, adopting efficient methods, whether it is in the space of utilities or space utilization or processes, making them leaner and leaner. It's also about removing the olives from the salad. So there used to be times where there are bells and whistles and X numbers of concierges, which is now being performed by digital concierges today. So removing those olives from the salad, proverbial ones, and then functioning and strengthening the asset is the fundamental responsibility of anybody who's into the space, who claims to be in the space. And towards strengthening an asset, the most fundamental requirement would be to establish the center as a safe, secure, responsible, and a center which therefore attracts the people of a particular nature. Like Ravinder very rightly said, he has first-hand experience in the space. I'd like him to add on to this after this, to say that the millennials are, people who will develop an affinity for you, okay? And they'll come from not immediate catchment alone. They'll come from, they're willing to travel some distances to be with assets who are relevant all in terms of what features that I've said. They must be safe, they must be secure, they must be hygienic, and they must be social, they must display social responsibility aspects, right, Ravinder?
Fully.
So just to sum up the discussion what we had, we discussed that yes, there is a need to rethink and re-strategize the tenant mix, basis the demographic-led approach and the demand of the customers, as well as keeping them all relevant, right? There are few new categories which are coming, and there are some categories which are increasing and decreasing the spaces depending upon their optimum store sizes. There are some categories which have the brave comeback, like electronics, groceries, all those formats. And there are some categories which are lacking behind, but they will, of course, with time, like saloons and spas and all, will pick the pace, right? Co-working, you think, can be a part of a larger, a social meeting place, which is part of a retail center, and can be part of mall itself as well. And it will help in providing the captive audience for the brands and the food court, especially food court inside the mall, right? And zoning concept definitely will change as per the need of the customer, the demographics, the relevance of the mall again. And retail asset management is the future, how we manage our assets. So with this, I sum up the discussion, and I would like to ask the audience if they have any questions to the panelists. I don't think so. We have a question. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. You want to ask me?
Diwanshu, just one question. So, what categories do you think are going to emerge in the next 3 years?
Muk, this is the debate which is going on with all the developers in various meetings I have with them, right? One category which I think can be a very big driver in metro is your home decor and furnishing. Apart from F&B, I'm not talking about the categories which is obviously exposed in the malls in today's scenario, but floor and furnishing, furnishing and furniture and your home decor is one category which will take a larger space. So brands like West Ham has come to the country, right? Pottery Barn is coming to the country. All those kind of brands have already seen spaces taking, and these are aspirational brands, right? But people are spending on those brands. The second category which I see and which Ravinder has touched upon is athleisure. The healthcare, athleisure plus healthcare put together, that zone can become a very, like we started in 2012 and 2013, we started making ethnic zones with the bridal, with the couture and all those kind of things. The same thing will happen, in my point of view, in athleisure category. Rest, everything, the percentages will go up and down depending upon the demographics and the market need.
Location and size of the mall as well.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.